Very early in the morning, Boaz got up, went to the city gates where all the business is transacted, got the elders of the town together, and called the man who was the nearer relative to Naomi than him. We don't know that man's name, we'll just call him cousin. Boaz his heart must have been racing, but he appeared calm and polite, and he said, "Hi friend, cousin, Naomi's land needs some redeeming, and you're a closer relative than I am, so you have the first right for the land." And the cousin rubbed his hands together and thought, that's good, I could do with some more land. Okay, he says, yes, I'll do that. But, said Boaz, if you redeem the land, you also have to marry the Moabite Ruth to continue her family line. Oh, now that's another thing. The cousin thought to himself, I don't want to marry a Moabite. My wife would give me heaps, and my children would lose some of their inheritance. And he said, on second thoughts, Boaz, it's your deal. And he hands him his sandal, which is their way of saying, I'm handing it over to you. Boaz gets the elders to witness the fact that he's buying the land and he's marrying Ruth. And so the elders witness this and they pronounce a blessing upon him, and they say, may you be famous in Bethlehem, and may your wife be as fruitful as Rachel and Leah. So Boaz and Ruth get married, and sometime shortly afterwards they have little baby Obed, whose name means servant of God. And Naomi, her life is really sweet. She's a grandmother. And we would end the story there. But it goes on to the genealogy. And genealogies are very important in the Bible. I want us to go back to the genealogy of Abraham. So Abraham married Sarah. They had a child Isaac who married Rebekah. They had a child Jacob who married Leah and Rachel. And from them came all the 12 tribes of Israel. And the fourth tribe was Judah. And when Jacob, before he died, pronounced a blessing upon each of his children, a prophetic blessing, he said of Jacob, the scepter will not depart from him until it comes to the one to whom it belongs. So the scepter is the symbol of rulership, of kingship, and it will stay in Judah's line until it comes to the one it belongs to, and that is Jesus. He is of the line of Judah. So going back to Boaz's family tree, he came from Judah, and Judah married Tamar, his daughter-in-law. This is a story of a kinsman redeemer who didn't do the right thing, and Tamar had to pretend to be a prostitute in order to get herself pregnant from Judah, and they have Perez. Read that sad little story in Genesis 38. You'll see there's quite a few skeletons in the family tree, because God is not interested in a person's background, but in their character and in their trust in him. So come down a few more lines to Ruth 4:21, and we get to Salmon. Now Salmon, we find from the genealogy in Matthew, married Rahab. She's a prostitute who was in Jericho, and she hid the spies. I suspect that Salmon was one of them. And they are Boaz's parents. And so Boaz marries Ruth, a Moabite, and they have the child Obed. And then they have a grandson, Jesse, and a great-grandson, King David, the greatest king that Israel ever had. Now, when Jesus was to be born, his parents had to go on a long trip in order to register for a census, and they went to Bethlehem because they were of the tribe of David, and David's family came from Bethlehem. They came from Boaz's family. And so Jesus is the final descendant, and he is our ultimate kinsman redeemer. In order to redeem us, he had to be a man. He had to be fully God and fully man. It says in Hebrews 2:14, because the children had flesh and blood, he too took on their humanity, so that by his death he may defeat the one who held the power of death. That's the devil. So Jesus is our kinsman and he's our redeemer. He redeems us from sin and death. And so that is the story of Ruth. Beautiful little story. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learnt something from it. The three things that I really learnt was, first of all, that in the darkest times, in the time of the judges, in the times we're living in now, there are still those who hold on to God and he cares for them. Secondly, God is concerned with the smallest details of our lives, what we eat, where we go, who we marry, and we can trust him to lead us through these things. He knows our needs and he has plans for our future. And finally, and most importantly, we have a kinsman redeemer. We have somebody who has freed us from sin and death, has put a protective coverage over us, and who gives us an inheritance in heaven and his name. We're Christians. What we have to do is say what Ruth did. Turn away from the past and say, spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are my kinsman redeemer. Bye.